All right, just the obligatory plug for what my company does, not because I'm trying to sell you my services, but because it kind of makes sense to explain what it is that we do. We're a call center. We're actually the sole call center responsible for all the different franchised brands of Clockwork Home Services. So that would include the 1 Hour Air Conditioning and Heating, Mr. Sparky, and the Benjamin Franklin Plumbing brands. Our customers are both in the United States and Canada, so we take calls from all of them. And we have agents available all day, every day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, my birthday. We're open all those days. Pretty much it's an inbound call center, although we do outbound calls, and we are going to be doing more of those outbound calls. Pretty much handling customers that call in and want to book an appointment with one of the franchisees. And I'll really try to stay consistent with this. It can get confusing, but there's a distinction between a customer and a client. A customer are the people that essentially pay us, which is the franchisees, and the people who our customers provide services to are the clients. So hopefully that'll make sense and won't get confusing. Currently, our environment, all of our inbound calls come in through a Mitel PBX. Because of this project, we were able to get an asterisk in the door, and once you know, once it's in the door, then ultimately down the road, the plans will be to have probably now Asterisk SCF handling all the inbound and the outbound calls. For those of you that are not familiar with the Mitel system, they have phones that are pretty much SIP. They're, how can I say this? They're to SIP as Microsoft is to TCP/IP. So there's the standard, and then they have enhanced it, which makes life kind of difficult sometimes to do fun stuff. And then, of course, we have the obligatory couple of servers for reporting and workforce management and document management and whatnot. Just kind of as a side note, our agents all run through a Citrix MetaFrame to access the call handling software, which I will talk to you about later. But that's just, so we have a Windows terminal server that all of the agents go through, plus the hard phones that are all connected to the network. So let's walk through a typical what's going to happen when a client calls in and we end up booking an appointment. First thing that happens is that the client's going to place a call. Our agent's going to answer the call, gather, of course, all the important and pertinent information, and then they access a hosted third-party call-taking application. The reason for that will become obvious shortly, but along with that agent, of course, are all our other agents that access that call-taking application, and not surprisingly, the data is stored in a database. Nothing weird there. The reason that the call-taking application is hosted third-party is because when the franchises are open, they come in on the other side and they essentially see their dispatch board. So we book the appointments and they see the dispatch board, and it's all served out of the same database, remote to us. However, not all of our franchisees, not all of our customers have access into this system for whatever reason. It could be 1- and 2-man operations, and so they're just out fixing leaky water pipes rather than, one of the reasons they come on the call center is that we answer calls and they fix leaks. We don't fix leaks, they fix leaks. So we answer the calls, they fix the leaks. So what happens after that is obviously somehow the franchise, the technician needs to know, hey, I got to go run this job. So our agent who just got off the phone, just finished putting the information into the call-taking system says, oh, gee, guess I got to call the technician. So they then pick the phone up, call the technician, and say, hey, you got to run this job. The technician says, great, thanks. And then they go service the client. Obviously, that takes time away from whenever the agent is making the outbound call. They can't be taking inbound calls. ACD system's funny that way. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to save all that outbound time. And so how do you think we do that? Well, obviously, we don't want to make this outbound call anymore. What we really want to do is we want to extract the events that are booked appointments. We don't really care about anything else that's going on for the purposes of this. We want to extract the booked appointments and save them off into our, essentially, event database. And then based on that, we want to have some magical, the magic happens here box that would then place the call to the technician. And then that saves us, of course, all the hassle of having to not only call a technician, but sometimes the technician doesn't answer, so then you have to call them back, and it just becomes a really big hassle, obviously. Here's the obligatory page full of mathematics. If you want to assume all these things, if we have an average call length for people that call in of about 8 minutes, including both the call handling time and the after call work time, which would be exclusive in this case of the outbound call that we're talking about, which ends up being on an average about 5 minutes, because on an average we get at least one failed attempt trying to call a technician. Either the number's busy, or they say, oh, it's a dang call center calling us again, I'm not going to answer that, or whatever. And we average roughly, again, if you assume that we're averaging one outbound call for every 2 inbound calls, that means that roughly every time you make an outbound call in an automated fashion, you're saving 25% of an agent. Now that could be like the left leg or maybe the right arm, but all right, it's early, sorry, never mind. We'll just move on then. So we've got Asterisk. So why don't we just build an outbound dialer and save all those minutes? Okay, so here's my first application, right? My dialer application. We'll get a list of the appointments that need notifications for, and then for each one of them, we'll call a technician, and then we'll update the database, because you always have to, it's not a real program unless you update the database. Even, I don't know if you saw David Vossel's talk yesterday, he built this really cool game that really isn't that cool, but at the very end of it, it actually goes out and updates the database with the final score, so it's a real application. Unfortunately, it's never as easy as these little applications are, because we don't always want to notify the technician right now. Sometimes we want to wait until later. If it's not an urgent thing, if, for example, it's, say, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night, and the appointment isn't going to happen until 8 o'clock the next morning, you really don't want to call up Harlan and say, hey, Harlan, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, you need to go run this call, because he might be wanting to sleep or something like that. And sometimes, some of our franchisees, they don't have the same people working all the time. So if you call Harlan at 2 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, at 9 o'clock you need to go run this thing, he says, thanks for calling, but Fred's supposed to be going out at 9. I'm on call now, he's on call then. So somehow we have to deal with that too. So our little application just got a little bit busier. So we introduced these concepts of notification intervals and quiet times. Basically, the notification interval would be what period of time during the day, could be all day, could be morning, afternoon, whatever, that they're interested in having notifications. And then the quiet time is essentially a subset of that. It says, yeah, we're interested in being notified about things during this period, but don't call us now. Call us at the end of the quiet time. So it's kind of like a no-fly zone for notifications, if you will. We can look at that kind of in a kind of a graphical way here, where the blue is notification interval, the green is no notification at all, and the red would be the quiet time. So the line at the top is franchise is closed. They want to be notified about anything that happens, anytime, 24 hours. You book it, call us right now. That's what that top one would be, all notify. The next one is fairly typical of what our customers would have, where they've got, in the middle of the day, they've got, don't notify me because I'm looking at my dashboard, I know the appointments are coming in, but outside of that time frame, midnight to say 6 in the morning, and then say 6 at night to midnight again, that's when I want to be notified. Yeah, makes sense. Then you have the next level down, which is basically the same notification interest, but now, well, if it's after 10, don't call me. And if it's before 4 a.m., don't call me. And so what happens is anything that we would notify, anything that's eligible to be notified during the quiet time, shown in red here, would essentially be held until the end of the quiet time, and then they get this flood of phone calls of, you know, you got this one to do, this got this one to do, they got this one to do. And then the final one is actually the easiest one for us, which is quiet time all the time. We don't care, book them, don't call us. It could be because they have somebody looking at their dispatch board 24/7, or it could be they've misconfigured the system. Usually the second, not so much the first. So of course, now that we've got more complexity, we have to have a website, because it really isn't an application unless you have a database and a website. And if you hook them together, that's even better. But so we have to have a website, and since this is not a class, a session on building websites, we'll just say that the magic happened back here, and now we have a website. And I've grayed out the stuff on the far right, so don't look at that. The interesting part of this screen right now is you can see in the red box the notification intervals have been configured. In this case, there's 4 of them. Basically from midnight to 7 a.m., 7 to 5, 5 to, John needs glasses, 10 p.m. and then 10 p.m. to, I should have looked at the other one, and then 10 p.m. to midnight. So those are the 4 different notification intervals that have been configured for this particular franchise, and can you see from, yeah, underneath here, it indicates what kind of notification interval it is. So you've got none, which is don't notify me. Then there's notify, which was the blue from the previous screen, which is I'm interested in things that happen. And then the final choice there on the radio buttons was the quiet time, so it would be a quiet time. So, unfortunately, it's still not that easy. Because we figured out when we're going to notify, but now it turns out that priority appointments, like, oh my gosh, my electrical panels has got sparks shooting out of it, those are kind of important, and so ultimately what the rules say, if it's a priority appointment, ignore the quiet time. That kind of makes sense. So that kind of makes it easier for us building the application, because if it's a priority appointment, then we don't care. If it's during a notification interval, then we notify you. If it's not during a notification interval, then we don't notify you. Then the red boxes there is, nope, we don't generate any kind of a notification event if it's not a priority appointment. If it's not a priority appointment and it's not during a notification interval, then we don't notify you. Again, that's a fairly easy one. The tough one is that yellow box there where it says depends. And that's, all right, I'll just save that joke too. Anyway, and so what happens here is that for non-priority type appointments, the quiet time now does matter. So if you really want to step through that whole logic tree, you'll see that sometimes they get notified, sometimes they don't get notified. Basically, if it's during the notification interval and the appointment happens, this one's kind of tricky, but if we book the appointment, let me go back a couple slides and show you something here. Actually,